So far we looked at the legislative gap assessments, what they are, what's their structure, how do we prepare them, and also how we can use them for the approximation effort. In this part of our session, we will look at the update methodology. So how can we update those gap assessments? As I mentioned before, they have to be living instruments because EU law develops very fast, and so does the Albanian legal order. So how do we update those gap assessments? Where do we find relevant information about EU legislation? Where do we find information about case law of the Court of Justice? Those are the three questions I will try to answer to during this part of the session. And at the very end, I will provide you with a list of useful websites where all this information is available. Updating really is not rocket science by any stretch of imagination. And if done on regular basis, it shouldn't be a major burden in your everyday work. It really won't take you more than 10 minutes a week to quickly browse through a number of websites to see if there's anything coming from EU institutions, Court of Justice included. Well, obviously, if there is something that is of our interest, a new piece of legislation, for instance, a new proposal from the European Commission, then we will have to dedicate more time, not 10 minutes. But we should not forget one thing. Practice makes a master. Once you start doing it, it will become a habit in your everyday work. It is very crucial to update Annex 1 on regular basis. I did mention that Annex 1 is in the Word format, and that exactly is for that reason, so we can update it very, very regularly, both for the legal acts, but also for case law of the Court of Justice. When it comes to the legislation, it is really easy, because all the legislation is published online in the official journal of the European Union. The case law is also available there, but not only. You can also find case law at the website of the Court of Justice. If there's anything new that merits our attention or attention of your colleagues dealing with the same dossier, then we should change the Annex 1 immediately. Please don't forget that when it comes to case law of the Court of Justice, which is listed in Annex 1, it is listed chronologically. So you add new judgments on the top of the existing list. The legislation of the European Union is published in the official journal. It's a promulgation gazette. It is available in two series, L and C. L contains all legislation, both legislative acts and implementing and delegated. Series C contains a lot of useful documents, but they are not legal acts per se. Both official journal L and C are available at the website of the European Union, and you have the address here. Before we look at the website, two important comments. First of all, if a piece of secondary legislation, be it a regulation or directive, has been amended, it is very crucial that we use a consolidated version, because that's the most up-to-date, giving us the actual state of EU law. And a second comment, there are two types of consolidated versions. Unofficial ones, which you will see at the Eurolex website, and I will show you how to define them. But also you have official recast legal acts, which are new pieces of legislation with new numbers, but with a note that they are recast legislation, therefore consolidating in one legal act the existing legislation. Because at some point we may have the basic directive and 10 amendments, and then the system becomes not very easy to navigate. EuroLeg's website is available in all official languages of the European Union. EU acquis is equally authentic in all those versions. For the approximation exercise, ideally, we should look at few language versions and compare them, just to make sure that we understand fully what EU law says. The legislation is drafted usually in German or French or in English and then translated to all other languages of the European Union. Since this course is in English, we will look at the English version of the website. This is what you will see at the landing page. It gives you the option of choosing the language version. The EuroLegs has changed recently to contain more information and to streamline the existing search engines. It is important that we check on daily basis the official journal of the European Union. You will see it on the left-hand top corner of the landing page. If we click here on More, we will see all most recent official journals of the European Union. Journal L and Journal C are, as you can see, in two separate columns. If we click on today's Journal of the European Union, we see a number of legal acts. For instance, a regulation dealing with common agriculture policy. If we click on this one, we have the legal act here, but also we can download it in the PDF format. So in total, we have 5 legal acts today. It won't take us more than a minute just to read the titles and realize that there is something here for us, or not really. And then we have today 2 journals C. This one is not yet available. This one is only available as the full official journal, so with all legal acts in one PDF file. This happens sometimes. There you go. You have, for instance, information from the European Commission that it will allow a merger of Volvo and another company. You have an official exchange rate, euro to other currencies, and a notice from one of the member states. There are days where you have 2 or 3 official journals, but still that doesn't change the fact that it will take you not more than 5 minutes to quickly flick through the official journal and see if there is anything that is relevant for you. If we go back to the EuroLegs landing page, you see in the middle a search engine. This you can use when you know which legal act you are after, so you know the number, for instance, of the legal act. Let's look at Directive 2006/123, which deals with free movement of services. If we type in 2006, the number is 123. Here we click on Directive and search. We will have the text of this legal act. If we click on this, you will see, first of all, here at the top, the publication details, Official Journal 367 of 2006, the date and pages. Below you see special editions for Bulgaria, Romania and Croatia. The directive that we are looking at had been published before these countries joined the European Union. Therefore, it was published in those languages of those countries after their accession, and then they are published in a special edition hence those 3 references here. The special edition of the official journal in Bulgarian, in Romanian, and finally in Croatian. You have the legal act itself here below, or as in the official journal, as I demonstrated a few minutes ago, you can have a PDF version, which is exactly the text that was published in the official journal. EuroLex allows you to find a lot of useful additional information about those legal acts. So for instance, if we click on linked documents, you will have a lot of important information. For instance, you will have information here if the legal act in question was amended, and if so, you will have a hyperlink to the amendment itself and consolidated version of the legal act. You will also find information here if a particular legal act has any case law of the Court of Justice based on it, and there you will have hyperlinks to those judgments of the Court of Justice. And we see the judgment here. We can click on HTML file and you have the full text of the judgment. At this stage is just an HTML file, simply because the judgment was rendered by the court on 27th February this year. Therefore, the PDF version is not yet available. And also here at the bottom you have instruments that are being cited in this directive. Now if we go back to the landing page and choose a directive that has been amended many times, for instance Directive 2004/18, which is a directive dealing with public procurement, we will see how we can access consolidated version of the legal act. You will have all different consolidated versions here as you move to the next web page. And here you will see the dates of those documents. This directive, as I just mentioned, has been amended many times. Therefore, we have many different versions available. The most recent one will come at the top. And if we click on the PDF file, you will have an official consolidated version. These versions, although unofficial, are very, very useful because they are prepared very, very thoroughly, and also they list all the amendments. On the left hand side you will have M1, M2, M3, all the subsequent amendments of the legislation clearly marked in the text itself. So for instance, we scroll down the directive, we have the preamble that hasn't been amended at all. But then if we go through the text, you will see here that provision, Article 7, was amended, and here amended again. Basically the thresholds for the application of the directive were changed. EuroLex also allows you to find pending proposals for legislation. You click here, EU law and related documents, you go down to preparatory acts. You will have option to choose so-called COM documents, joint documents and SWD documents. For approximation purposes, COM and SWD documents are of highest importance. If we click on COM documents, you will have a list of most recent proposals from the European Commission. For instance, here if you click on this, you will see a proposal for a Council implementing decision authorizing Sweden to have a reduced rate of taxation for electricity. In COM series, you will also have various reports, communications of the European Commission. These are not proposals for legal acts. These are not legal acts at all. However, they contain a lot of useful information which might be used in the approximation exercise. For instance, when you have a communication on implementation of a particular legal act by the member states, then you can learn a lot from what member states did while implementing a particular directive or a regulation. SWD documents are staff working papers, which often provide more detailed information than COM documents. The reason why these days we have those two series of documents is very simple. COM documents are translated into all official languages of the European Union, or almost all, while SWD documents are usually translated into French, German or English only. It's simply to save money on translation. Eurolex website also allows you to search through the case law of the Court of Justice. You click on EU law and related documents, go down to EU case law. Now, once we click on search, we will have the search engine. There are various ways of searching in this database by using different keywords. It can be word in the text, it can be word in its title. However, if we follow that method, we're probably going to get a lot of judgments to sift through. So it's much easier if you know either the case number or the name of the parties, because then the database will immediately take you to the relevant judgment of the court. So for instance, if we type in here judgment C30305, we will have both the judgment of the court and also the opinion of Advocate General. If we click here on this PDF file, we will have the full text of the judgment as published in the European Court reports. It's a judgment of 3rd of May 2007 in a case called Advocaten voor de Veld, which was a very important judgment for all those lawyers dealing with justice and home affairs. It dealt with the legality of the European arrest warrant regime. We looked how to find the legislation. Now it's time to look where to find the case law of the court. There are two websites where you can do it. First of all, the website of the Court of Justice, and second of all, the Eurolex that we already looked at when discussing the access to secondary legislation and other EU documents. The judgments are published, the opinions of Advocates General are published too. Until 2013, end of 2013, judgments of the court were binding only in a hard copy in the European Court reports. As of this year, there's no longer hard copy. All judgments are electronic and they are binding in their electronic version, which is available at the website of the Court of Justice. Having said that, let's take a look at the website of the court, what we can find there and how to navigate it. Just like at Eurolex, this is where you can check the case law that will be coming from the Court of Justice in the next 2, 3, weeks. Since the court is in recess in August, we will immediately move to September. And for instance, if we click on the 10th of September, we see that there's a number of hearings that will take place at the Court of Justice, but also we will have a number of judgments rendered by the Court of Justice, and hyperlinks straight away, so we can click on this and see what the case is about. If, for instance, there is a prior opinion of Advocate General, as here, we can access it. Unfortunately, not in all official languages of the European Union yet. Eventually, the opinion will be available in all of those, but not for the time being. And also you can access the application from the National Court, where you will see the questions that were asked by the national judges. By looking regularly at the calendar of the Court of Justice, you are able to stay on the top of things and monitor how the case law develops. And judgments, apart from the recess periods where the court doesn't sit, are rendered on a weekly basis. If you know the case number or the names of the parties, then it's very easy to find the judgments at the website of the court by using the search engine, which you will find right in the middle of the landing page. So for instance, if we type in here C30305, we will find this judgment of the court, as you can see, available either in HTML file or in PDF, just as it was published back in 2007, in this very case, in the European Court report. This was a very important judgment of the Court of Justice on the European arrest warrant, which is one of the key legal acts in Justice and Home Affairs area, falling under Chapter 24. As I mentioned, the case law of the court is also available at the Eurolex website. I already demonstrated how to find case law relevant for particular legal act when you first search for a legal act, and then the Eurolex website allows you to find relevant case law of the court. But if you know the case number, if you know the names of the parties, there is a much easier way of getting access to the judgment, to the opinion of Advocate General. On the landing page, you look at EU law and related documents, then you go down to case law. Once we click on this, this is what we get, and ideally then we just click on search in EU case law. That's the easiest way. It gives you many options. You can either go through the CLX number of the legal act, you can go through the word in a text search, which is not an ideal option, because if you, for instance, type in right of establishment, you're going to get hundreds of judgments to sift through. So when looking for a particular judgment, the best way to do it is either by knowing the case number or the names of the parties. So if we look here for the same judgment that we just looked at, but at the website of the court, I just typed in the case number, you will have exactly the same information. So the judgment of the court in PDF and HTML, as well as the opinion of Advocate General in this case. The judgments, I should add, are published on the day they are rendered in full. So we have both the conclusion of the court and full reasoning of the court immediately. Once we identified that there was a development in EU law, a new piece of legislation or a new judgment of the court that might be relevant for us, the question is, how do we verify the importance of such a development? And then we have to ask ourselves a number of questions. Does this new development fall under one of the approximation priorities, which are laid down in Article 70 of the Stabilization and Association Agreement. Does this new development fall under one of the short or mid-term priorities in the European Partnership, or one of the priorities mentioned by the European Commission in the Progress Report, or maybe one of the priorities mentioned during subcommittee meetings or Stabilization Association Council, or maybe it's one of the priorities in the National Plan for European Integration? If so, then definitely that particular development, legal act, judgment of the court, is of highest importance. This, once we verify that this is actually an important legal development, this should be followed by a proper consultation in a relevant forum, be it an interinstitutional group, working group for European integration, where together with your colleagues from other line ministries, you will verify if you're right that this is an important development and what actually it means for law approximation. Maybe it can be taken into account when a new piece of Albanian law is drafted. There's a number of websites, apart from the two that I presented a few minutes ago, that could be useful for you. The website of the Council of the European Union, the Commission's website, the European Parliament website. All of them are listed here for you. This concludes our session. We looked at the legislative gap assessments, how they are structured, how they can be used in the approximation effort, including the planning of approximation work, and how they can and should be updated on regular basis. I do hope you found this useful. Thank you.